Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also consider clicking the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings in astrology on a variety of topics ranging from relationship readings to career to transits for 2-3 years, or solar return charts or predictions for 1 year, etc. You are free to email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can send you a pricing list and reading options and any other details that you might require. Also, I want to mention that I have started membership options on this channel, and the short of it, just to give you the short perks that you will get if you choose to join the membership section, you will get 1 extra video per month for each membership stage or tier. So for the first tier, you will get 1 extra video per month. For the second tier, you will get 2 extra videos per month, so you will have access to level 1 and level 2 videos. And for level 3 or third tier, you will get 3 extra videos per month. The level 1 and level 3 videos are going to be on a variety of topics, so basically anything related to astrology, but it will be content that is not shown on my regular usual videos, right? So this is members only exclusive content, and it can range from, tips and tricks on how to read a horoscope to, I haven't done this yet, but I plan on doing maybe members only astrological synastry for famous couples, for instance, or the analysis of famous people's horoscopes, but then I can also get into divisional charts, etc., etc. So all kinds of things. The level 1 or second tier of membership options is especially related to synastry astrology topics, meaning relationship-oriented astrology. So this could be things like how to discover which kind of partner archetype is right for you according to your horoscope, or it could be, again, different characteristics, whether you're going to have a good marriage according to your horoscope or a less than stellar marriage. But you can find more concrete examples in the lists that you will find in the video description, because I have added the playlists where you can already see all the videos that I have posted in each members section. So yeah, you can see what videos you will have access to from the ones that I have already done. But I will continue to post, like I said, 1 extra video per month for each level of membership. And in addition to that, in the members only section, you will have access to members only polls, and you will also have priority when it comes to getting your comments replied to on my channel. And you will also have stickers that basically show up next to your username that show that you are a member, and a couple of exclusive emojis. All right, so that's pretty much all the perks that you can have as a member on my channel. If you're curious, you can check the video description for more details as well, or you can click the join button under any of my videos to also see the prices, because the prices will be shown in your local currency. All right, in addition to the members only section, I also have a tarot channel, and I post there semi-regularly, and I will be linking the tarot channel in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. It's called Martine's Tarot. So if you are curious about tarot, if you're into it, maybe check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to this intro. And now I'm going to get straight into today's topic. So welcome to another video from me. I'm going to get straight into the topic, which is Lilith aspects in synastry. So I have been asked about Lilith many times on my channel, but I avoided talking about it because for a long time, really, I didn't want to look at Lilith aspects, but in more recent history, I would say, like, let's say in the roughly past 1 or 2 years, I have started to look back at it when I started to notice some patterns with respect to synastry, especially, and then I also started to look at, how Lilith plays out in the natal chart. First, I want to say that, in case you don't know anything about Lilith, so technically there are multiple Liliths out there. So there's also an asteroid Lilith, but the ones that are used, in fact, the one that is used most commonly is the mean Lilith, or also called the mean lunar apogee. That's what it's called sometimes. So it's basically the average distance between the Earth and the Moon's apogee, whereas the second most commonly used Lilith is called the true Lilith, or the black moon, and it's called the osculating lunar apogee. And that is the point of the Moon's furthest orbital distance from the Earth. So these are like not the most important pieces of information because the calculations can easily be made online. Astro.com also provides free calculations of the Liliths. You can select, I think I have made a video, actually, I don't know if I still have it up, where I show how you can use Astro.com for free. I've been using it since, I think, around 2005. And it has a wide selection of options, and you can also use sidereal, because as you know, I use the sidereal zodiac. So if you go to the extended chart selection on astro.com, you can create a free account. I think for like less than 4 charts, you don't even have to create an account. In any case, you can go to the extended chart selection and add the mean Lilith from the list, and then you can also add you can type in H13 in the additional object section to see the true Lilith, or the black moon. So what I wanted to say, like one of the first things, so I'm going to get straight into it. One of the first things that I want to say about my observations, first of all, I want to say, of course, there's always a lot to examine. There's always more to discover. But so far I have done, I would say at least a few dozens, if not hundreds, of horoscope analysis where I have looked at Lilith quite in depth, both at the mean Lilith and the true Lilith. And what I have noticed predominantly is that the mean Lilith tends to be more relevant in synastry, whereas the true Lilith seems to be more relevant when it comes to personal horoscopes. Now, I could be off again because these are like just general observations so far, so I would have to like go way more in depth and analyze way more horoscopes to know for sure. But this is so far what I have noticed, all right? So it would help if you could also check your own horoscopes and maybe, share your own informations with respect to your life experiences and what I'm about to express in this video, or if you know of other people and their horoscopes, their placements. You don't need to know the exact time of birth to calculate the Lilith, most likely, unless it's like, of course, in the very late degrees or very early degrees of a sign. Maybe in that situation, it would help if you know the actual time of birth, because it might change within the same day. But mostly, you don't have to know the time of birth to calculate the Lilith placement. So with that being said, the main things that I have noticed, with respect to synastry at least, are that, first of all, Lilith contacts, and I have mainly looked at conjunctions and oppositions because these are the strongest aspects, but I would say to some extent you could also look at trines, squares. Sextiles, again, I would not really take it into account because it's a very mild aspect. And, Lilith is already kind of an elusive energy, so yeah. Also, when it comes to degrees, I, of course, would take into account, that I would take into account the fact that the stronger the conjunction is, like the tighter the orb is between Lilith and the planet or the point, in question, the more powerful this aspect is going to be felt. But in general, I would still apply the theory of Vedic astrology, which is that if they are in the same sign, it still counts as a conjunction. And if they are in opposite signs, it's an opposition, irrespective of orb difference. So basically, it creates a very, very strong attraction that is oftentimes both physical and extremely spiritual or, metaphysical in some way. And what I mean by that is I have seen like some people try to liken it to the aspects of Pluto, but I would say that it's like deeper than Pluto in some ways and way more subversive, way more subtle in many ways. Like when you have Pluto aspects, Pluto tends to be felt very sharply, intensely, and with Pluto aspect, you have a lot of very strong ego issues. With Lilith, the ego issues are not always triggered in the same way, so not the most predictable aspect. So I'm going to get more into detail as I progress. But namely, what I have noticed is usually the planet person, the one who has their planet conjunct or opposite the Lilith of another person, that tends to be the more triggered and might have different issues brought up in their psyche that is somehow connected to the planet that is being activated. What I have noticed in both the examples of famous people that I have studied, as well as in, all the personal private horoscopes that I have looked at, synastries that I've looked at, including of people that I've known for a long time, including some of my own synastry situations. What I have noticed is that irrespective of which planet is being activated by Lilith, you have a very strong attraction. So it's like something metaphysical, and it's almost like the Lilith person becomes a very strong temptation for the planet person. But it gets deeper than that. It's not just a physical thing. It's something to do with how the Lilith person conjures some kind of like deep, psychological attachment and fascination. And like I said, so the nature of the planet is going to give you nuances to this. So like when, let's say, you have Moon conjunct Lilith in synastry, you often see this very, very deep, intense emotional bond. But again, you're going to see this as particularly strongly felt by the Moon person. So the Moon person is going to be extremely attached, sometimes unhealthily attached, even to the point of becoming codependent to the Lilith person. I've actually seen this repeatedly in synastries of people who, like, even if they don't get in relationships, like I know this, of situation that I can think of right off the top of my head of two people that I knew who were constantly kind of flirting at work. And the woman in question asked me to analyze their horoscope, and he had his Moon conjunct her Lilith. And the weird thing was, even though this man in question... Alright, sorry, there's an alarm going off. I have to pause. So even when the man in question was actually having a girlfriend, so this woman from work was technically, I guess, buddies, but everyone in the office kind of could sense that there was something going on, some kind of a chemistry going on between them. This man seemed to be like very emotionally attached on some level to her, and even to the point where they kept meeting they actually met at a later date at another company, or like they had work, I think, together at like 3 separate jobs or something. And they kept having like this weird sort of, on the surface, I guess, brotherly, sisterly relationship. But from her perspective, she also kind of had a crush on the guy. It's just that the guy was in a relationship and was kind of probably being shady as well, to be honest. But irrespective, right? This is just one example. It's like everyone could see that, especially from the guy's perspective, he was flirting with her, at least at the onset, or when he was in between relationships or something. And from his perspective, he was definitely attracted to this woman in question. With the sun aspects to Lilith, for instance, so I'm just going to give you like some examples. I'm not going to go through like an in-depth explanation of every type of Lilith aspect, but I'm going to give you the main things that I have noticed, all right? Just to illustrate how they play out. And what I've noticed again with the sun conjunct or opposite Lilith is that the sun person gets their ego and their sense of identity somehow very much wrapped up with the Lilith person. And this is also where I can see the similarity to Pluto aspects, because a lot of the times there are also like some very selfish ego situations and like I guess ego struggles being brought up to the light of a person with this aspect, especially the planet person, not the Lilith person so much. So with the sun person, again, you could see situations where the person just gets very drawn to the Lilith just because the Lilith is somehow boosting their ego, maybe boosting their sense of confidence. Sometimes it could even be like somehow the Lilith person supports the sun person's life path in some way, you know? They are somehow increasing this person's visibility, or sometimes even their sense of identity, depending on the situation, you know, and the kind of sun that we're talking about. Because, of course, you have to look, I always mention this, you have to look at individual horoscope situations, because some suns are stronger than others, right? So, especially if you're looking at a sun that is weakened, for instance, it would tend to show up like their ego gets wrapped up around the relationship with the Lilith person and the Lilith person's energy and sensuality and all that, to the point where they need that person to feel good about themselves, you know? So it turns into a pretty selfish contact, but nevertheless, it's also very deep and, you know, very, like, it brings up a lot of attraction. And also another thing that I want to say, also with the sun and all the other masculine planets, especially when it is the woman's Lilith, it tends to bring up topics of control, like even bordering on abusive. And this is also why, again, I can see again the parallel to Pluto, but it's a little bit different. It's different. Actually, it's not just a little bit. It's different in multiple ways than the Pluto aspects. It's probably also because of the symbolism associated with Lilith, which is kind of like, you know, the, what is it? The rebellious woman who would not submit to Adam. I don't know if you know, like, the mythology in Judaism, that Lilith was basically this woman who was meant to be the first wife of Adam, but she would not, quote, submit to him, and instead basically decided to abandon her wifely duties, quote unquote, and copulate with a head demon, and created thousands of demon babies, which were said to be mermaids, according to legend. So she lived somewhere in the Dead Sea with her pina coladas and her demon boyfriend, instead of being the good wife. Anyway, that's my short, partially accurate, I'm sure, explanation for the myth of Lilith. But anyway, you can find more online if you're really curious about it. But the bottom line is that this Lilith energy is very much connected to especially the archetype of the rebellious woman, the untamed feminine. So it really tends to bring up topics of control within the man. Although not always, all right? I've actually seen this go both ways. And I'm actually going to mention some famous couples examples. So you're going to see more concrete examples at the end. But in any case, so it's like anyone could play this Lilith archetype. In any case, it does bring up these like power control issues, especially when you see the masculine planets conjunct Lilith or opposite Lilith to some extent, sorry. And you especially see it with the Mars. So I would say Mars Lilith aspects are the most problematic. I actually have seen this in the horoscope of someone who was essayed by a person within her family. And the person's Lilith was conjunct this assailant's Mars. Now, I'm not trying to say that, again, this is always going to turn out to be some kind of horrible scenario, but it is not entirely excluded. So just like when I talked about the Mars-Pluto aspects, you would expect to see, power struggles. And similarly, actually, with the Mars-Pluto, for instance, there's no component that is specific to gender. So Pluto is kind of a genderless energy, but it's about psychology, and it's about using passive-aggressive, underhanded, indirect methods to manipulate. So when you have like Mars-Pluto aspects, the Mars person tends to react aggressively to the Pluto person because they perceive their hidden power, and also because they can sense that the Pluto person is doing something behind the scenes and potentially might outmaneuver them. But the Mars person is reacting from aggression because that's what Mars knows. With the Lilith and the Mars, actually, it's more like the Mars person fears the Lilith person. And it's, in fact, from what I have noticed, and I've noticed this in a lot of relationships, it's like the Mars person feels very, very threatened by the Lilith person. Like, even worse than when you see it with the Pluto conjunctions, as far as I've noticed. Again, especially when the Lilith person is a woman, and this is a straight relationship. The Mars person tends to be, like, very terrified of the Lilith person, and to a large extent, what I think is happening is that the Lilith is actually triggering the Mars identity around their sexuality, for instance, their pride in their virility and all this nonsense, all this like macho stuff. So again, how this plays out to a large extent will also depend on how, advanced, how emotionally mature the Mars person is. With the Lilith person, and this is something that I wanted to say, irrespective of the aspect in question, what I have noticed is that, especially at the onset of a relationship, and in fact, without the feedback from the planet person, the Lilith person most of the times is completely clueless to the level of emotions that this person, the Lilith person, triggers within this other person. And this is irrespective of what planet you're talking about. So I was talking about Mars earlier, but this happens with every planet that Lilith, especially with the conjunctions, the tighter it is, it's even more so when you see Venus or Mars, because these planets are connected to sexuality. So especially when you're talking about romantic relationships, these planets become extremely potent, and they create these kinds of obsessive interactions, and these in many ways, if the relationship overall is healthy, and there are also other aspects that support compatibility, this can actually really add to the durability of a relationship, the satisfaction in the relationship, the overall happiness, because the planet person, it becomes very infatuated, very attached to the Lilith person. And the Lilith person, in exchange, will tend to just get the benefits to a large extent. Like, they will feel, like this person, really cares about me. With the Mars, for instance, the positive, for instance, with the Mars, from what I have noticed, is that, especially, again, in a straight relationship, when the man is the Mars and the woman is the Lilith, and I've actually noticed this with the Mars aspects, I've noticed it when it's conjunctions to both the mean and the true Lilith. So again, I would have to do more research on this, but I think it applies to both of them. I haven't seen it so often with other planets. I don't know if the Mars aspect is like particularly potent or something, but I have noticed it with both the true and the mean Liliths in famous people's examples and in examples that I've studied from people that I've known. All right. Another thing that I wanted to say is, for instance, I've noticed that Jupiter conjunct Lilith tends to show up a lot in married couples or in long-term relationships, which I think is a little bit unusual. Again, I would have to do more in-depth research to try to understand why that happens. I would say it's probably because Jupiter is connected to marriage. It is basically the karaka of not the karaka of marriage, but it is the ruler of the ninth house, and it is associated with children and marriage and legacy to some extent, right? The karaka, the main karaka of marriage is Venus, actually. So again, with Venus and Lilith, I have recently mentioned this in the video that I did about Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, that I'm not surprised. I was actually really shocked when I saw that they had the conjunction, because I only realized that as I was doing the reading, when I was recording the reading. And I was like surprised that I hadn't noticed like initially, because I did look at their horoscopes. So anyway, but I have seen this Venus Lilith conjunction come up very often in relationships, long-term relationships especially. And not just long-term relationships, but another theme, this leads me to another theme of Lilith relationships, or Lilith-dominated relationships, is that it can be, the attraction between these two people can be so strong. And again, it's usually particularly felt from the side of the planet person, but it is mutual, all right? It's just that the planet person is more likely, as far as I've noticed, to be the one who feels it more powerfully, and is also more likely to take action somehow based on this aspect. And basically, yeah, another theme is the fact that it tends to bring people from very incompatible backgrounds together, you know, or like very different backgrounds. So sometimes it can create these kinds of relationships where people from the outside are looking at them and like wondering, how did these two people even meet, you know, like, because they come across as so different. They might come from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and this is even when there is no Rahu involved in Synastry, right? And sorry, not in Synastry, but in their individual spouse archetypes, because I have mentioned this, especially for those of you who have been on my channel a while, or maybe you have read this from other sources. There are positions within the natal horoscope that suggest when you are meant to marry or be with someone from a from a different ethnic background, right? So usually you would expect to see Rahu, that is the most dominant influence, but then there are also certain combinations between houses. And in any case, with Lilith aspects, they can be so strong that they will bring people together even when these people are like, not, you know, completely incompatible from the surface, at least. Or it seems to others like people would scratch their heads and ask, what are these two people even, you know, sharing together? Like, what do they have to talk about? Because they might come across as so different. Or, of course, it might also encourage things like love affairs and situations where one person abandons a serious relationship for this other person that they have the Lilith aspect with. Or, you know, all kinds of like drama could also be happening, because especially, and again, I've seen this especially with Mars and Venus being involved, but it can be with any other planet, because they're all very, very intense. They are felt very intensely, and they create this very strong fascination, even more so than the Pluto aspects, as far as I have noticed. There's like this very deep metaphysical, spiritual bond that happens between these two people, on top of the fact that there's also usually a very strong physical chemistry. So these are pretty much some general ideas based on what I have noticed. And I would be really curious, again, it would really help if you could share your own experiences or the experiences of people that you know, maybe to help with the research. But these are some general trends, and I might do more specific videos in the future about each particular aspect between Lilith and a certain planet, for instance. But these are some general guidelines, which I think are enough for you to get the general idea. So I would say overall that with, of course, bearing in mind that you always have to look at the full horoscope. But overall, I would say that these aspects are a plus when you also have other aspects that show compatibility. So by themselves, these aspects, of course, will not be enough to point to a healthy long-term relationship. But if you also have other aspects that would point to a healthy long-term relationship, these would very much solidify the relationship, right? Create a deeper, more intense bond that is more difficult to break. And yeah, that being said, I'm going to go over some of the examples of famous couples that I've come across and with their specific Lilith contacts. So I have looked at mainly, like I said, I have looked at the mean Lilith and the true Lilith. But most of these are with mean Lilith. So unless I specifically mention that this is about the true Lilith placement, these are all about the mean Lilith placements. So Michael Douglas, for instance, has his Lilith in Virgo conjunct Catherine Zeta-Jones' Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter. Catherine Zeta-Jones being his wife. Also, Catherine Zeta-Jones' Lilith conjunct his Saturn in Gemini. So I found this one to be particularly telling because I remember having been a bit of a Catherine Zeta-Jones fan back in the day. I remember when she talked about why she married Michael Douglas or how she got together with Michael Douglas, and she said that she always thought that he was the ideal man ever since she was a young woman or something like that. And I feel like, okay, the fact that his Lilith is conjunct her Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter, I think might have something to do with that, because that's a very strong fascination, especially the conjunction to Jupiter, which let's not forget, in a woman's horoscope shows the husband archetype, right? And husband / long-term partner archetype. Another example of a famous couple are Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. So Brad Pitt's Lilith is opposite Angelina Jolie's Sun and Mercury in Taurus. So his Lilith being in Scorpio. I also feel like Brad Pitt is interesting because he has his Lilith in his ascendant, but won't dwell on that. I might do a separate video about how Lilith plays out in the natal chart. But I think it's fitting for someone who is a quote-unquote sex symbol. And also the fact that he has his Lilith, opposite her Sun and Mercury. So I feel like, again, here in this case, it explains why Angelina Jolie was fascinated with him. And again, speaking of gossip and all that, I remember when back in the day I, used to hear, when they got together or right after, there were all these rumors about did they have an affair and blah, blah, blah. And I very distinctly remember some snippet of an interview that I saw where she actually admitted that she really wanted to meet Brad Pitt. So I was like, and then there were also some shady parts where she actually said what woman wouldn't find him attractive or something like that, which I thought was a little bit on the nose. But all right, you have to cut let some stuff slide because whatever. And yeah, you can't blame her for being attracted to him, but let's not get into the whole was she being ethical or not topic. And then we have J-Lo and Ben Affleck, like I mentioned. So J-Lo's Lilith is conjunct his Venus. So this is definitely a very potent aspect that shows attraction physically and romantically, and especially from the part of the Venus person. Makes sense. And especially when you see Lilith with Mars and Venus, you see that the planet person kind of projects their fantasies, their sexual and romantic fantasies, on the Lilith person. That's just what I'm going to say. Another example is Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe, who also had the same conjunction. So Joe DiMaggio's Lilith was conjunct Marilyn Monroe's Venus in Aries. Also, her Lilith in Leo was conjunct his South Node and opposite his Moon in Aquarius. So again, I feel like this is telling because he was the one who seemed very emotionally bonded, even to the point where he continued to send flowers to her grave long after she passed away. And there were all these like rumors. I mean, as far as I've seen some documentary about her life ages ago, that basically said that he was very heartbroken, and everyone who knew him, actually, there were rumors that they were about to get together right before she passed away, and that he never fully recovered. And so he was very emotionally invested in that relationship. I also mentioned them in the Moon Mars video that I did because he had his moon conjunct her Mars. So I also explained how that definitely would add to a very strong emotional and physical bond. But then on top of that, he has his moon opposite her Lilith, which would further deepen the emotional connection and, create maybe even a sense of codependency on his part. He also made some comments about, how great their love life was. So again, that would definitely explain a lot, considering all the aspects they had in Synastry. She also had her mean Lilith opposite Arthur Miller's Jupiter in Aquarius, and more importantly, she had her true Lilith conjunct his Mars in Cancer. So the reason I underline the true Lilith, conjunct his Mars in Cancer is because he was notoriously abusive towards her. In fact, both DiMaggio and her husband, Arthur Miller, was abusive. But with Miller, it was, to some extent, particularly demeaning because he made fun of her. Like, I remember reading some story that, or it was, I think in the documentary, that she was very offended when apparently she found some snippet of his diary where he cracked, some joke about how she wasn't particularly bright, or she wasn't a serious actress, that she was basically just, a bombshell. So it seemed like pretty disrespectful. And on top of that, he also made a movie for her where he did not portray her in the most flattering light. And, people said that basically he was just taking advantage of her in some ways. With the Mars-Lilith aspects, you do see a distinct pattern of the Mars person trying to control the Lilith person, especially with the conjunction. Again, I have looked mainly at conjunctions and oppositions, but conjunctions are always the strongest. Another example is Ike Turner and Tina Turner. Yeah. His mean Lilith conjunct Tina Turner's Jupiter in Pisces. So, again, the way, with respect to how this played out, I mean, again, their synastry was complicated. Unfortunately, their times of birth, I don't know about Tina Turner, but his time of birth is definitely not known. I think I have mentioned them in another video as well. But they had multiple aspects that showed potential abuse and power struggles and stuff. But here, interestingly, we have the conjunction to Jupiter, which again would tend to show that marriage bonding situation. And also I feel like Jupiter is about monopolizing someone's entire belief systems and life trajectory as well. So again, worst case scenario, right? Best case scenario, I've actually had the Jupiter-Lilith conjunction in Synastry with a friend that taught me a lot about metaphysical topics, so it can definitely be a positive thing. Like I said, looking at the full horoscope is really important. Another example I checked is Marilyn Monroe and JFK. Her mean Lilith was conjunct JFK's moon and was trine his Mars and Pluto. Sorry, his Mars. That's it, not Pluto. Normally I look at the conjunction and oppositions, but in this situation I couldn't help but notice that she also has a trine to his Mars. I won't get into the rumors here because, again, definitely the trine to his Mars from her Lilith would not be enough to explain that she was murdered or something. But, that's a very complicated topic that I'm not going to get into. I think I have mentioned her in one of the Arud Halagna videos where I talked about causes of death and how she actually does have some dubious configurations that might show not a might show a wrongful death, let me put it like that. But also we have the mean Lilith conjunct his moon, which again would show a fascination and, emotional connection from his part. And last but not least, we have Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh. So this one I thought was interesting because here we have a heterosexual relationship with the roles reversed, meaning that it was his Lilith conjunct Vivien Leigh's Mars in Gemini, but also her Lilith conjunct his Saturn in Pisces. So I thought that this was interesting. Again, if you watch some information, some documentaries about how their relationship played out, first of all, it did start as a very tumultuous affair where both of them basically dumped their entire lives, including their spouses and their kids, in order to be together. They do have other aspects in Synastry that would reinforce the same pattern of wild love and a lot of passion and all that. But the Lilith conjunct Mars would definitely add to this. And I feel like it's especially telling. Oh, it's also her Pluto here. This is where I mentioned Pluto. So it's not just his Lilith conjunct her Mars, but also her Pluto in Gemini. So she had a Mars-Pluto conjunction. Which would add to the intensity, of course. And they were known for having a very passionate love affair and, having this kind of wild attraction for one another. But then they were also known as time progressed for the fact that she started to be almost abusive towards him and was controlling, especially towards the end of the relationship. He basically had enough and wanted to move on and start a life with his new girlfriend, which eventually he did. And Vivien Leigh was very controlling to the point of, stalking this woman and not letting her be and stuff like that. And, which is typical for her being the Mars in the relationship. And there were also things that that I remember from, again, a documentary that I saw about them, that really made it sound like she, in some ways, was very controlling and almost kind of tried to downplay his achievements and his strength. I remember watching some interview where she referred to him as Larry boy or something like that, which is typical, unfortunately this is not uncommon where you have the Mars Lilith conjunction. I have seen it, unfortunately, multiple times where the Mars person tends to become a little bit, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot abusive. And because the Mars person, even though they're very attractive, or maybe precisely because they're very attracted to the Lilith person, they also want to control the Lilith person. They're afraid of what might happen if they break away. And also because they on some level feel threatened by the power of the Lilith person. So they feel this need to, cut them down in their ego and all that to kind of clip their wings, if you will. And also I think her Lilith conjunct his Saturn, I think maybe has explained why they had a long-lasting relationship despite everything that they went through. But also I think it may shed light to why the relationship was very taxing overall on both of them, but especially on him, really. Yeah. So, this is pretty much what I have so far, and I might do future videos talking, like I said, about more specific details for each aspect. I don't know about each aspect, but let's say between each planet and Lilith and how they might play out, and also talking more about how Lilith plays out in the natal horoscope with respect to personality development and life path trajectory and all that. So this has been pretty much it, and I hope you have enjoyed it. And if you have, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I will upload a new video. Also, please comment in the comment section with any feedback you have on this video or any information that you have to add to the topic. It would be really useful. And also, again, if you are interested in finding out more about private readings, about the membership options, you can check out the introductory phase of this video where I give more details. And if you're interested in finding out more about tarot, because I have a tarot channel, you can check out the video description because I will leave the link there. If you want to check it out, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you at my next video.